had an appointment with my doctor. I'm like, look, I can't even eat right now. He's okay. You have dysbiosis. It's time to talk about diet options. Either you go on a SIBO diet. I prescribe some medications that your insurance probably won't cover. He said, or you can do carnivore. Carnivore. I was like, I've heard of it. Tell me what this is. I think a lot of people are shocked. I get a lot of looks of surprise. That sounds really extreme. If you read about it and take the time to learn, a lot of people with autoimmune diseases that eat this way, they reach remission and they get off their medications, which ultimately is the goal. If I don't eat this way, what quality of life do I have? You say I'm going to have a heart attack. If I do, I don't know that it's going to be from this diet. It's probably going to be from an unmanaged disease, such as these bacterial infections I'm fighting.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We have with us today Cassie. Cassie, where are you located?
I am just outside of Seattle, Washington.
Oh, me too. What part were you at?
We are on the outskirts of Sultan and Monroe.
Okay. Oh, in Monroe. Gosh, I'm in Snohomish. So I'm literally your neighbor. Gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, how funny. I had no idea.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. We've got another fellow. I don't know if he's here today, but Bob is in Snohomish as well. So we've got quite a few people in this local area. So we'll have to meet up at some point. Wonderful. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Tell us, so you got a story you're going to share with us. Tell us a little bit about, what's going on with you, or where your background and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I have had back pain since I was about 18. I'm 31 now. I got sick in 2020. My back just completely started to give out, like my SI joints. So it got to the point that I could hardly walk. So my mom and I did some searching and we're like, okay, we got to investigate this because this isn't normal. So we started looking for answers and I was diagnosed with Ankylosing Spondylitis, confirmed with MRI. I didn't have the genetic factor that they commonly test for. So I was diagnosed with that thinking, okay, we have an answer. I continued to get worse to the point that I could hardly walk. I was using mobility aids like walking sticks and a walker when I was really bad. And I was like, okay, something's wrong. This isn't normal. You shouldn't be declining this fast. And I was so swollen at that point. I was like, okay, time to find somebody else. Because I got tested for MS, all sorts of other things, and everything was coming back normal, which normally that's good, but you want to know what's wrong when you don't feel good. So I found a functional medicine doctor who tests for your root causes. So things like mold, Lyme, Bartonella, parasites. And after quite a bit of testing, I found out I have mold, and I've been battling that since 2021. That's when it was confirmed, at least. Lots of detoxing with that. And then eventually we got to testing for Bartonella and Lyme. My Lyme test came back positive. That's a hard one to test for, especially if it's covered in biofilms, basically, so it's not going to come up. But Bartonella came back pretty positive, and that causes a lot of joint pain. And specifically in my heels, that was one of the first things to go for me. Was I could hardly put weight on my heels, so I'd have to sit a lot. We went through lots of testing, found out the conditions that I'm dealing with and bacterial infections. In 2022, in the summer, I got sick with COVID. At that time, I was eating the Terry Wahls protocol diet to try to correct all this stuff. But it got to the point after COVID, I could hardly eat. I was in dysbiosis. I would drink my smoothies, which were normally, like, most people can drink a smoothie and keep it down. I couldn't even keep food down at that point, in or out. It was pretty bad. So I had an appointment with my doctor. I'm like, look, I can't even eat right now. I don't know what to do. COVID really messed me up. He's okay. You have dysbiosis, most likely SIBO. It's time to talk about diet options. So we can go about this two ways. Either you go on a SIBO diet. I prescribe some medications that your insurance probably won't cover. They're maybe going to work. We don't know. There's a good chance they won't. He said, or you can do carnivore. And I was like, okay, carnivore. I was like, I've heard of it. Tell me what this is. I'm like, from my understanding, you just eat meat. And I've never been one who is successful in doing like really strict diets. So I was like very imitated. Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. Intimidated by this. I was like, okay. I said, you're putting a lot of faith in me, telling me to do this strict diet. Because even when I worked out, I was like, you have to have carbs. Like carbs are life. That's all I knew. He's like, you can think about it. And I was like, no, I don't want to deal with the medications. I'm already on 4 times a day meds. It's another thing to add. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And this was just with the intent to fix my dysbiosis, or correct it, I should say. So I went on it. He's like, you're going to give it 4 weeks and we're going to have another appointment. I said, okay. I did it. It was really hard because I was used to consuming all the sugar, all my fruits and vegetables, and eating rice and bread and all the things I shouldn't really eat. But especially after COVID, I could hardly eat anything. So I started eating bread, which was probably the worst thing I did. And after a month, I got out of the sugar cravings. It took about 4 to 6 weeks to really get off those. And I was like, this isn't so bad. This is really easy, actually. I'm used to having to prep 9 cups of vegetables a day, which is a ton, to I hardly have to plan my meal. So I started to see improvements with my joints, especially my spine. And at my next follow-up, he was like, okay, I'm glad your gut's doing better, because all of that resolved. Within 4 weeks, I was keeping my food down, obviously, as soon as my body got used to the meat. And my bowels were regulating. I wasn't having any constipation issues, which is pretty common with people that are sick with mold. Yeah, you're going to continue. Let's just see how you do.
And how long ago has that been now?
Oh, excuse me. That was August. I started Carnivore in August 2022, and I've been on it ever since. Through the holidays, I did try to be normal. Bad idea. Bad idea. I've really understood my body now, how much of a difference these foods can make. Like if you go from eating this anti-inflammatory diet to reintroducing things such as corn, like corn tortilla chips, not a good idea. I felt it within an hour.
Wow. I'm impressed that there's a local functional medicine doctor that's out there recommending carnivore. That I'm not even sure who that is. Do you mind sharing what the name of the physician is? Or
yeah, I'm happy to. Dr. Brendan Cochran.
Okay.
He's out of Linwood.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that the message is reaching into the local area and stuff. That's really neat.
Yeah.
So you mentioned ankylosing spondylitis, which you mentioned the genetic, and usually something called HLA-B27, which is often associated with that. And it's an autoimmune condition. Was that still the working diagnosis throughout this, or was it something else, or you thought it was just maybe the potential infections with mold or Lyme disease or something like that was on top of that, or what was the deal with that? And are you still on meds for all this stuff?
Yeah, great question. So I have asked that question because I've heard that a lot. Lyme and Bartonella, they're the great imitators when you have these diseases. He is still on the fence of saying if I have ankylosing spondylitis or not, because I still get some changes with my spine, like my muscles will tense up and my spine gets achy. However, I used to frequently visit this place that I later found out had water damage. So my symptoms were really bad when I was visiting this place. And this is when I was eating carnivore, thinking that should be helping things with my spine. When I stopped visiting this place, within a week, because I was going there multiple times a week for long hours, within a week, my symptoms drastically reduced. So I had a follow-up with my doctor and I was like, this is interesting, because I thought this would be just my AS. I'm like, but now I'm starting to wonder if a lot of this has been from mold.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it was. I was scared to tell him. I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat, but I'm feeling a lot better being out of the mold.
You had mentioned because the back pain was so severe, the pain in your heels is so severe, you're basically using walking sticks and things like that. What's your level of function and how do you contrast from the lowest point to where you've come in just less than a year, I think?
Yeah, it's been about 2 years of going through this, but less than a year on Carnivore, I should say. Yeah, I went from mobility aids. I go to physical therapy multiple times a month. I am deadlifting again. I'm doing some of my CrossFit exercises. I am making gains like way faster than when I was healthy a few years ago, working out 5 days a week, was not seeing the results that I am now. It's crazy. And I've seen this in some of your videos that you post, like you get this amazing pump exercising now. Things that I would have had to take supplements for to get that kind of pump. And now being fueled with meat and eggs and a little bit of dairy, I'm like, holy cow, I don't get the shakes afterwards. And I can do 45-minute workouts again versus before, like I would only be able to do mobility exercises really light. And that was even just a few months ago.
That's quite remarkable. It's like I said, because you said you're 31 now, so you were in your 20s and you're walking around with crutches and canes. How it had to play a number on your mental health? Did you have some sort of I'm not doing good with this and all these other things going on? And how has the diet impacted or everything you've changed? How has it impacted your outlook?
Yeah, you definitely fall into some pretty heavy lows because, friends are having kids. I'm not having kids. We don't have kids currently. I can't go hiking. I love to hike. I have this trail right by our house that goes out to this lookout. I haven't been able to do that in probably over a year. And I used to just walk it like it was no big deal. It shouldn't be hard, but now I can do those things. I still have some of the hypermobility issues, which that just is something we're going to work on with time. That'll take some treatments, but it definitely affected my mental health in terms of it's just depressing. You want to be out and participating in social events and you don't feel good. Yeah. But now I'm starting to get back to it. This disease has been tough. It's really taken a toll on my liver. And I have to be careful with social outings still because now I've developed some chemical sensitivity. So I can't be around people with perfume. I've turned into one of those people, but nothing you can do. Yeah, it's really cool now because I can tell, I don't know, coming off sugar, because I know sugar messes with our, I don't know if you call it mental health, but because you get like the dopamine response when you eat all that sugar. I've noticed there's so much more clarity. I'm happier and I'm not feeling those massive lows like I was when obviously things were much worse.
Yeah, that's obviously your situation has improved. So somebody say, I'm not as sick, so I'm going to feel better. But I think actually the good nutrition actually helps our brain function better as well. So people around you, obviously, you said you don't have kids, but I assume you have maybe a spouse or a partner or something like that. And they had to have seen this transformation. Obviously, the physical therapist that you're working with. Has anybody said, hey, what are you doing? Are you telling people that, I'm just eating a carnivore diet, just eating a bunch of meat? And what's been the response?
Yeah, I told my physical therapist. He's done carnivore, which that worked out. So he's already familiar with it. And I was wondering if you were going to try that. And he's already seen the results. So I lost 20 pounds within the first, 6 to 8 weeks. And a lot of it was just inflammation and water weight. Even my doctor's office, they were like, whoa, we didn't realize how inflamed you were. From like a physical appearance, you could see all the inflammation just started to go away. Like my face was super puffy. But at physical therapy, he's already seen massive improvements. Like I'm able to ride the dirt bike again, which I haven't rode in years. So it's super cool. And he's okay. Now we got to get you stronger for your dirt bike. So he's been putting me to work and seeing how fast like I'm upping the weight, which is so cool.
Yeah, that's got to feel good. Particularly, you put in all this time and effort in the gym before. It sounds like you trained before, and it's very slow. You don't make much progress. Then to suddenly start making progress, it's a lot more fun. Hey, you mentioned you were on the Walls protocol, and that's classic. From my understanding, is she typically uses that for multiple sclerosis. Maybe she's had something for other autoimmune conditions as well. But how did you get involved in that? What made you decide to do that? And what were you doing, and how was it either helping or not helping you?
Yeah, my doctor recommended that initially. He started off recommending a low mold diet. Dr. Jill Krista has a really good little cheat sheet that you can use for foods that are low mold and then foods to avoid. So that was our starting point because we had to tackle the mold. You can't treat your other diseases like Lyme, Bartonella, if mold is blocking it, because that's going to take over. So he put me on the Walls protocol because from what it sounds like, he's seen good improvements with that with people that have these autoimmune diseases. Because the Walls protocol typically is low mold. You might have to just knock out a few things. And he wanted to keep my bowels moving because that was one of the biggest things. When I first started seeing my doctor, it was terrible. So much constipation. Mold just stops your GI tract. I didn't even know that was a thing. And we had to start working on that. And he wanted me to incorporate organ meats, which I'm not a liver fan, I'll be honest, but I can do beef heart. And we actually have a guy that lives down the road who does cattle, and he gives me his beef hearts, which is really nice. So that's been cool. But it was for my doctor to do the Walls protocol. But I couldn't, even when I thought I was doing okay on it, those vegetables I couldn't do. Looking back, like I see photos and I was still really bloated and puffy when I was eating all of those.
Yeah, you mentioned a smoothie. I assume you were blending up vegetables, and was that part of that too? Was trying to get that down there?
Yeah, tons of vegetables, like so much in a day. You can't just eat all those leafy greens. There's no way.
Yeah. It's the thought is you get such a high amount of these supposed antioxidants, which we don't really absorb well anyway. It's funny. And yeah, vegetable smoothies, I can't think of anything more unpleasant to drink in my mind. I wouldn't want to do that. But are you working right now? I'm not sure you're at work or at home or something like that.
Yeah, I'm working from home today. I actually work for Dr. Cochran's office now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just started a month ago. And before I was a vet tech. I was a vet tech for 12 and a half years. And my spine just couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't feeling good. And that's a hard job.
Yeah. Was it small animal or is it larger animals too? Just like dogs and cat type of vet?
Yeah, dogs and cats. And I loved it. I was our lead tech for the last 7 years. And it was awesome. You love getting to work with the animals. I worked with amazing people. So it was like leaving my family. That was hard to do. But my doctor's office offered me a job to help take over the wife's position eventually. She's the manager. Yeah, I was flattered.
Oh, very good. And you certainly are an advertisement for what he's doing has worked. And I'm happy to see they're using nutrition, particularly the carnivore diet. That's still, even though it's becoming more and more common, but it's still pretty rare. You said he started in the carnivore. So what did that mean to you? Was it dairy? Was it eggs? Was it pork? Was it seafood? Was it everything? Or was it just, or did you go very strict, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I asked him for kind of a list of what he recommended since we were having to crack my gut at this point. So he said any red meat is fine. I believe he wanted me to limit pork just because pork can be so dirty. He was fine with chicken, some fish, as long as it's wild caught, obviously. Sardines, he was okay with. But the biggest thing he made sure to tell me was to add salt. And I didn't understand that because I came from salt's bad. It's going to make you swell up. I didn't understand that. And now I'm like, hey, does anybody have some salt? Because I need to salt my food. Yeah, I mean, it was mostly meat. He said I could try to introduce dairy. I've never had an issue with it in the past couple years, but specifically he was recommending like raw milk, local dairy farms if I'm going to get their yogurt. Oh, eggs. I knew I was forgetting something because I have chickens. So I'm fine with eggs as long as you know that you tolerate them. Go ahead and eat them.
Yeah. No, I'm wondering because there's a book on the carnivore diet. I know the guy that wrote it is pretty good. No, I'm just kidding. That's my book, but I'm just kind of see how close people are sticking to what I'd written a few years ago. So it's interesting to see that. And as far as you said, you lost about 20 pounds. How hard were you hungry all the time, or was it pretty satisfying for you?
In the beginning, I was pretty hungry. I think just because I was coming off massive carbs and my body was just saying, hey, we need those carbs. But once I got over the hump, it was really easy. I would only eat like maybe twice a day. Now I'm up to 3 times a day now that I'm exercising. I got to have more fuel. But where were we?
No, it's like how much you're eating and how hard is it to stay full and that type of stuff. A lot of people
full.
Yeah, a lot of people say satiety is quite good on the diet. Did you find that to be the case after that use of the carbs?
Yes, satiety. Absolutely. Yes. It doesn't take much. Like I'll have my steak and I'll add a little bit of ground beef. I heard one girl say, my ground beef is my brown rice to my steak. I actually like that. I'm like, oh, that's nice because then it changes the texture around and you feel like you're getting a little bit more with your meal.
Yeah. And working at a physician's office, and I don't know what the situation is there, maybe not, but a lot of times people bring junk in all the time. There's baked goods and donuts and all that stuff, depending on the size of the office. Is that kind of an issue that you have to deal with there or no?
Not at the place I'm at currently. I mean, when they do bring things in, like his wife will bring things in, she'll make it. She's made these carnivore, I don't know that you'd call them treats, but it's a treat for us basically. And she follows some very specific recipes because Dr. Cochran does eat carnivore to my knowledge. I see him munching on steak and carnivore snacks. But at my past job, tons of baked goodies. There was always candy somewhere within reach that you could snag when you're walking by. People would bring us donuts, like lots of appreciative clients that would bring us baked goods, which is hard, especially because I was eating carnivore when I was working there. It's hard because you're like, oh yeah, that tastes good. But you get to a point where you're like, I know if I eat that, I'm going to feel terrible afterwards.
Yeah, how much after going through this weird, you just look at the world a little differently and other people's behavior and how they eat all this baked goods that come in and then you see their behavior changes, maybe they're tired or something. Are you able to notice that now and appreciate more how crazy it is that we eat all this stuff and think it's normal?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in the 90s. It was normal to have a can of Coke with your dinner, which is terrible. I look back on the diets that we were raised on and I'm like, no wonder I'm sick. We ate a lot of garbage. Although my favorite foods growing up were fruit and steak. I would beg my dad to buy steak. And my dad would say, it's a little too expensive because we've got a family to feed. But the nights that he would barbecue steak were my favorite. So now it's cool because I'm like, I get to have steak all the time. This is great.
Yeah, it is funny when we just kind of listen to our bodies, and it's definitely telling us to, in many cases, to eat steak. I know mine is. In fact, I'm going to have steak in a couple hours. I'm already thinking about it. So you said initially the transition was a little challenging. Tell us a little bit about that or any difficulties you've had with this so far.
It was really hard in the beginning. I had a few nights where I just cried coming off sugar. I was like, why am I so emotional? This is ridiculous and embarrassing because it's just food. When you stop and think about it, you're like, it's just food. But it was such an addiction to eat those things. And coming off it, it sparked all these emotions. I swear my hormones were going crazy. I was really tired initially. I don't think I was eating enough because I wasn't used to eating that much protein and fat. And that was the biggest challenge, was making sure I had enough fat because we hunt. So we have a lot of game meat, which obviously is very lean. So I had to add in more fat, which that was a challenge, and getting used to consuming more fat than we're trained to think, especially when you go from doing like the workouts back in the day. My trainer would say, "Oh, you got to watch your fat," when that probably would have helped me. I probably would have lost more weight and seen more results had I been eating more fat and protein. But that first month was pretty brutal. I feel like by week 3, that's when I was telling my mom, because my mom was so worried about this diet. She was very skeptical. And she's like, "Are you sure you should do this? You can just stop and just go back." I'm like, "No, we're on week 3. We're counting down," because I'm thinking, oh, it's only a month that we have to do this. Have to. And I'm like, no, actually, now I'm starting to feel full. I'm not meal prepping like crazy, which takes a lot of time. And now I can just focus on other things. Like food isn't such a big deal anymore versus the way I was eating before. It's like my entire day revolved around food.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people, and we look at the average Americans eating like 6 times a day, starting at about 7 a.m. and ending about 10 p.m. And we're just constantly eating and thinking about our next meal and prepping and shopping. And it's kind of a ongoing, never-ending process. And so to simplify it and make it where I only got to eat a couple times a day and I'm good. As far as you'd mentioned getting enough fat, there's some people that will do this diet in a very high-fat fashion, ketogenic. They'll try to get 80, 90% of their calories from fat. And other people are more moderate. Like myself, I'm more like 60, maybe 70% some days. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Do you find that you need to eat a lot of fat, or you just enough to keep you energized?
I feel like I have to have a fair amount of fat. I notice the days that I make it a point to eat, like if I were to add butter or something to my steak, I notice my energy level comes up versus the days that I don't focus on getting as much fat. Those are the days that I'm like, okay, I'm dragging just a little bit, not anything like I was before, but I'll have days where I definitely see that improvement. And recently, that's what I was noticing now that I'm exercising more and lifting weights. We obviously need more fuel for that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's amount of energy. When you're not having carbohydrates in the diet, you're gonna need some fuel somewhere, and just protein doesn't quite get it. Where you'd mentioned you hunt a little bit, you've got a rancher nearby that gives you some cow hearts and things like that. Where do you get a lot of your food from? Different sources? Do you go to the store and get it, or where do you get a lot of your meat from?
Yeah, my favorite when I get out there is Kelso's in Snohomish. I love the butcher out there. Their ground beef is really good. Otherwise, for now, I've been getting my steaks at the store. If I get lamb, I try to get grass-fed or organic if I can. But when I've talked to my doctor, he said, ideally you would be eating organic grass-fed meat. He's, but at this point, I'm okay with you going to Costco and getting a big pack of ribeyes. That way we just focus on you're eating enough.
Yeah, fair enough. And I can tell you from my perspective, it doesn't seem to make a big difference whether they choose grass-fed or grain-finished. It just practically doesn't make much of a difference. For some people, individuals, there are some differences, but the overall impression is just eat what you like and play with it and see how it does. But and I've been to Kelso's before, so I've ordered some steaks from those guys and stuff. And I was hoping, I guess they're no longer doing slaughter in their facility because I had to go up to Stanwood to get my half a beef up there when I got it earlier this year or last year rather. You said your mom don't do this. What does she think these days? She's seen the difference, and what is her thoughts?
Yeah, she's definitely seen a difference. And now it's really sweet. She brought up in a text message recently because she wants me to be successful on this. She knows it's hard when you go to a barbecue and there's all this potato salad around you and macaroni salad. She's like, when we're together, I will eat the same way as you, so that you can be consistent, because she doesn't want me to fail. I don't know if I've given off that impression that I'm going to, but she's really sweet. Now I think she's read enough about it. And now I don't know that she's necessarily going to eat that same way, but she's eating pretty similar. She's still got some veggies she's adding in, but I think she's gained respect for it because she's seen when I was super inflamed, I could hardly walk. She's been with me this entire journey to now. I'm like, no, I just need my steak. Give me some hamburger and some steak and I'm fine. Even when we have the family events, like I don't need to eat all the other things. They smell good, but initially she was worried about scurvy, just the typical, you're not getting your fruit in, you're going to be like the sailors.
Yeah, so far you haven't developed scurvy, unless scurvy means you're feeling better. I guess that's the modern diagnosis of scurvy with us. We just feel better. Must be scurvy. Yeah, maybe your mom she secretly wants to eat steak, and she's on a seat with you. She's giving herself an excuse to actually, quote unquote, be bad and have the steak, but it's not being bad. It's actually doing what we're supposed to do in many cases. As far as, okay, let's talk about some, like you said, your digestion was really bad before, constipation, all these gut issues. Has that largely improved and gone away?
Yeah, absolutely. If anything, it's usually the opposite right now. I'm on some specific binders for mold. They're clay, so they're going to slow you down. But that's another reason why I'm paying attention to my fat intake. Because when you eat enough fat, things are going to go right through. There should be no problem. I've had friends ask me when they're constipated, what should I take? Because they know my history now. And I'm like, we'll do carnivore. And they look at me like I'm crazy. It works. I couldn't go for several days when I was really sick. And now that we've transitioned to this, it's very regular, probably 2 to 3 times a day, which is about where we should be.
What about things like skin, hair, nails, any changes in that? A lot of people notice that their hair gets thicker and their nails grow faster and skin improves. Is that something you've noticed?
Yeah, my skin looks so much better. I haven't had a ton of acne in my adult years, but if I ate things like chocolate, I would immediately get a little blemish on my face. But I haven't had any acne since eating this way, which is really cool.
What about, I'll ask, because some of the females will ask about, what about things like menstrual cycle and stuff like that? Was there any difficulties in the past, and did that change it, or has it still been the same?
Yeah, I had a lot of bad cramping. That was one of the things that I feel like I noticed, besides my GI stuff. I feel like that was one of the first things I noticed when I started eating carnivore was cycles became more regular. I had far less cramping. And I'm having a lot less hormonal issues in terms of like temperature regulation. Like I had a really hard time with that, especially around my cycle. And my AS symptoms around the time of my cycle, it's pretty common for women with autoimmune stuff. It'll flare up. It's really calmed down. My biggest issue now around my cycle, it's not even the cramping and all that. It's my hypermobility in my pelvis, which I thought was weird. But yeah, it's definitely improved. And I would say not that's ever an enjoyable time of the month, but now it's not so bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can't, I don't have any personal experience,
Right.
But sure, I get it. You're starting to train now, you're getting stronger. How often are you doing that now? And are you finding any difficulties with it?
I'm training about 3 days a week consistently now. If I get a 4th in, I'm pretty excited. It just depends on where my spine's at that month, because sometimes it does get a little bit achy. It's been really refreshing though. Before, that was, I think, the hardest thing I went through, getting sick, because I went from working out 4 to 5 days a week consistently. I loved it. It's where I would go and reset, to I couldn't work out. And the doctors told me I had to stop working out, which broke my heart. And I mourned that for probably a year, which was maybe a little excessive because that's how attached I was to my exercise. But that's where I went to just let go, reset mentally. And now I'm exercising 3 to 4 days a week. And I would say I'm on about week 6 now of like true consistency. I haven't been able to say that in years. And now, like I was doing my deadlifts, I was able to engage with my muscles so much faster than before. It's really cool. Things are clicking faster. I don't know how to put that into words but makes sense. But like that mind and body connection, and I can be more explosive than I used to be when I'm doing like my cleans and jerks. And I was told when I first got diagnosed with AS, they were like, you're not going to pick up a barbell again. And I'm like, oh, okay. Challenge accepted. Don't tell me I can't do something. And the moment I could start to feel things were getting to a point I should start experimenting with this again, I was like, I'm buying a barbell. I'm having a barbell at the house and we're going to do this. And now I'm like, okay, I need to get heavier weights. I'm so excited.
Good for you. Yeah, I've been lifting weights for 43 years now. I'm just like, I can't imagine life without it. I got kicked in the face last night doing jiu-jitsu. I could do without, but other than that, I like the exercise. It's wonderful for us. And you mentioned your husband, he hunts, or you guys hunt together. How has he responded to you doing this stuff? And is he doing a little bit more of it, or what? I'm sure he likes eating meat, I would imagine, but how's that going with him?
He's supporting me. He's not opposed to it. He has Crohn's, unfortunately. We're both lemons. So fun. So fun. He has tried to do carnivore, but he went gung ho. And he is one of those people, mentally super strong. His body is very sensitive. So when he tried, I shouldn't laugh, I'm terrible. He gave himself a gallbladder attack because he just did massive influx of fat. And he's always known he can't have tons of fat. He's just one of those people that's very sensitive, especially during a transition. So he's making better choices now, eating more meat, eating less sugar. He still does rice just because he hasn't been able to completely come off stuff. When he does changes, he has to be really slow. But I'm hoping maybe someday he'll get there and he can eat the same way.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Crohn's success with carnivore, and maybe not going so crazy on the fat initially might be something, because that's something you end up with a lot of bloating and diarrhea and things like that when you go too crazy on the fat sometimes. So interesting that you both have an autoimmune type of thing. It's becoming so much more common these days. How do you not eating sugar anymore? Some people can't imagine that. They couldn't imagine giving up all the sweets and desserts and things like that. How do you set with that? Are you okay with that?
I am okay with that. If I really want something, I'll have some yogurt and maybe add a few berries to it. Because that was something in the beginning my doctor said I could add, because he knew that the transition would be hard. But he said, just use some dark berries. Don't go reaching for like the pineapple and the mango and all that. But candy and sweets, around Christmas time when I tried eating that stuff, it was terrible. It doesn't make me feel good. So it makes me want to stay away from it. It's not something that's tempting to me anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have these small victories, like you make it through, you go on vacation and you're able to stay on target, or you go through a holiday and you find out, and it gets easier, and you find out tricks and things like that. Because honestly, the times that I have eaten off plan on carnivore, I was like, man, it wasn't even very good. I didn't really enjoy that stuff. And then of course you get I feel like garbage, and you don't really need that. And like I said, you're now working at the doctor's office, you're getting stronger. Do you have any goals? What are your goals? You have some goals on what you want to try to do over the next few years?
My first goal, we're going to both get dirt bikes, but they're going to be like the dual sport or street legal ones. We have little dogs that we can put in our backpacks. That's my first goal, which I know a lot of people are probably like, that's a terrible goal. You could get hurt. You have all these issues, but I've missed out on so much life over the past few years being sick. I'm at this point where I'm like, no, I want to get out. I'm okay with taking those risks. We're not going to go on the highways and stuff. That's not our goal. We can even trailer the bikes up to the trails, but I want to get strong so I can ride the dirt bike. Because you have to be strong to ride those. It takes a lot of strength to control them. And I want to be able to keep up with my husband, because he's the crazy one who can go off and do all these things way stronger than I could ever imagine. But that's my first goal, is getting on the bike. I've been using the little pit bike and I'm feeling confident with that. And then my other goal, this will just come with it, but getting back to lifting what I used to lift, but not in the sense that I have to get there. I'm just thinking this is going to be achievable at this point, which I was told that wasn't going to be achievable. I'm going to have to do things that only consist of bands and body weight, which body weight isn't bad. That can be really hard. But when you're used to weightlifting heavy loads and then all of a sudden you can't, it gets really exciting when you're like, okay, this might actually be a possibility again. And now it's within reach. It's not very much weight for most people, but I was deadlifting 115 pounds last week, which, yes, that's not that much when you think about it. But for somebody who could barely lift a 20-pound bag of food 6 months ago, that's incredible.
Yeah, that is. And congratulations on that. And I think your goals are great.
Thank you.
Like you said, you want to participate in life. And so many of us we can't because of these diseases. And I'm just wondering, the person that diagnosed you with AS and said, hey, you'll never lift again, you haven't had a chance to say, hey, here I am and I'm back to it yet, have you?
Not yet. It was mostly my chiropractor who was saying I wasn't going to be able to do the barbells anymore. But when I see him, I might say, hey, guess what I picked up?
Good for you.
And we'll see. Thank you. We'll see what he says.
Yeah, that's really neat. So if you were 0% at the depths of your worst, where you couldn't barely walk and you're in constant pain, your guts were all messed up, compared to that to now, where would you say you are percentage-wise?
Probably 80%. Yeah. Because I feel like if I take that 20%, I would point that towards my hypermobility, because that gets painful with my SI joints. It's very annoying. That's one of the things that I have to really be mindful of when I am weightlifting, and even wearing like an SI belt, at least until we do some more treatments on my pelvis, which is scary to say that out loud. I'm like, okay, we're making progress. Don't rock the boat.
Yeah, that to go from barely being able to walk to now deadlifting. And you said, are you doing cleans and stuff like that now? You said you were doing some cleans. Okay, yeah. Wow, that's pretty, because that's obviously dynamic and explosive and all of those things put together. Are you on a social media person? Do you share your story out in public or anything like that?
Yeah, I am. My handle is C Marilyn E on Instagram. And I share my story. I haven't been as active lately since starting a new job, but this month I'll be sharing some reels with my progress for Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
So C Marilyn, how do you spell that? Is it the letter C?
Yeah, letter C, MARILYNE.
And then since you've been sharing that I guess you've been sharing, hey, I've been going on this all meat carnivore diet. Has the response been good, bad? You get a mix of both. What's the response been?
I think a lot of people are shocked when they hear it, because they think, I've had people tell me they're worried I don't eat enough, which I'm like, once you start eating this way, you do reach satiety. Like, I love it because I don't have that massive hunger feeling anymore. Versus before, like my old coworkers knew I was the snack queen. Like, people would buy me bowls that said snacks on them because that's just the way I was. Don't get me wrong, though. I still love carnivore snacks. Those are my favorite. But yeah, I get a lot of looks of surprise, I would say, because they're like, that sounds really extreme. And I'm like, if you read about it and take the time to learn, a lot of people with autoimmune diseases that eat this way, they reach remission and they get off their medications, which ultimately is the goal.
Yeah. And there are people, I guess it's fortunate because relatively soon, can you imagine if it was 10 years down the road and you were just constantly put on, here's more medicines and here's more medicines. And I see people like that all the time. And because the physicians aren't clued in that nutrition can be so powerful, and a lot of them don't even believe it. So nutrition has no effect on disease. What if someone were to tell you that nutrition has nothing to do with gut health or autoimmune disease? What would you tell them?
Oh man, it would be hard for me to not start laughing. I typically speak what's on my mind. I would just tell them they're wrong. It's so wrong. because how can I go from eating a basket of tortilla chips, feeling like death afterwards, and I'm in the most pain I've felt in a long time, to I'm just eating my meat and salt, and I put salt in my water, to feeling really good and full of energy. And I want to get out and live and go be part of these social aspects of my life that I had to let go.
Yeah, that's certainly, I just see that so many times over and over again where it just changes. And a lot of people will say you could have got the same results if you just ate a balanced diet of fruits and vegetables and a little bit of lean meat and not eating junk. Do you believe that to be the case, or did you try something like that already? Because a lot of people says, well, you don't need to go carnivore, you should do something else. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I was already trying to eat that way before, even with the Walls protocol. You could say that. And I don't think that's a bad diet. Maybe it works for some people. But for me, it didn't. I was eating all these vegetables and I felt terrible afterwards. If people give me a hard time about eating this way, I'm like, it works for me and that's okay. You don't have to eat this way.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think, I don't know how much, I guess I haven't really looked super closely at the Walls protocol, but it is a lot of vegetables, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it? It's like multiple cups a day or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it equates to 9 cups a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting a stomach ache just thinking about that, particularly now. And I never liked them in the first place. I would be like, I would lose weight on that diet because I don't even want to eat this stuff for sure. So I guess you could do that. And I think that's why I guess maybe you can kind of spice it enough or put some kind of flavor on there to make them palatable, but goodness. Has anybody like with AS or any of those things contacted you at this point?
Yeah. Ironically, I got a message yesterday because I had just shared my most recent reel with my story the other day. Somebody shared my reel to another girl who has Lyme and has been dealing with a lot of issues. And we started talking, and I might be mixing up people now, but I think because I've had a few messages recently regarding carnivore, because I'll post it in my stories primarily like, hey, it's lunchtime. This is my lunch, just to show people. But I've had multiple people say now that have Lyme that they're eating carnivore. And if they go away from it, they notice their symptoms get worse.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing because a lot of people say, you don't need to do that, you shouldn't do that or something like that. And for you, it's a quality of life issue. And what about the people who will say all that saturated fat and cholesterol is bad for you, it's going to give you a heart attack and you're going to die die young because of that? What is your response to that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The way I put it is they're going to die from this disease because I had tremors when I was so sick. I was not functioning very well. And still, I lost my train of thought earlier when I was talking with you. It's affected my brain. I get forgetful at times, but the way I've explained it is, well, I'm either going to eat the standard American diet and I'm going to have a poor quality of life, which that's something that I've learned there's a lot of value to that, especially after working in vet med, because we were always focused on quality of life for animals. We're putting their quality of life first. And oddly, I could relate to that. I'm like, I need to focus on my quality of life. I need to boost this. And now that I've been eating this way, I'm like, if I don't eat this way, what quality of life do I have? I'm going to be curled up on the couch. I already spent 2 summers on the couch. That was terrible. And I missed out on a lot. So you say, you meaning people that judge this diet, you say I'm going to have a heart attack. If I do, I don't know that it's going to be from this diet. It's probably going to be from an unmanaged disease, such as these bacterial infections I'm fighting. And I've already gone through a big cardiology workup in the beginning of this. I saw every specialist you can think of besides endocrinology. And the only one that listened to me, which was actually really cool, was my cardiologist. And I was like, that's good because my heart's kind of important. And she wanted to know about Bartonella and what I'd been doing for it. So that was cool. But at that time, my heart looked healthy. I was just having a lot of PCVs from all the pain. So they had to monitor that and make sure I wasn't getting like an arrhythmia.
Yeah, one last thing. We have to go here in just a second, but because you work with vets and animals for so long, how did you see a lot of sick, overweight, obese, diabetic dogs and cats? And was there any sort of thought on what these animals are eating?
Yeah. Oh, that's a slippery slope. So in vet med, it's tricky because we would hear people that would feed only meat. And I worked with some cardiologists that we've recently seen studies, and I'm quoting from this, where dilated cardiomyopathy happens when pets don't eat grain. Now, I did ask the doctor I'm working for now how he felt about that. And he went against the grain and said he doesn't believe that's true. Now, he's not a vet. He doesn't know the research for animals, but it does make me wonder sometimes. And I love vet med. I try to stick with what I've been taught. But at the same time, now that I'm eating this way, sometimes I wonder if a diet for these animals that are overweight, diabetic, like, I wonder if meat would make a big difference for them.
I can tell you, just my dogs, that's all they eat, and they're happy as can be. And my 11-year-old runs around like a puppy still, and she's been doing this for, 6 years, just meat. And my little one who's 7, he's been doing it for 6 years. And they are, they're as healthy as can be. So I think there's something there. Cassie, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I guess we're neighbors, and maybe you, me, and Bill, and some of the other locals will have to have a big old barbecue feast sometime in the near future, because we're literally like, probably all of us are within 10 miles of each other.
That'd be great.
Thank you. The rest of you folks, thanks so much. We'll be back again tomorrow. Everybody have a great day. Thanks again, Cassie.
Thank you.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to CarnivoreDiet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.